Hi there, my name is Carmen Liziswain from Switch on Health, and welcome to tonight's free webinar on my appointments with Anil Mustafa. She is delivering a special presentation for us this evening, and it is three. Oh, now I've lost it. Three important clinical tools for success in practice. I probably got that wording slightly wrong because I didn't memorize it, but to that effect. So we have had Anil on before, and very, very super impressed with her and her passion for the industry and for supporting practitioners. And yeah, huge experience. The standouts for me last time, apart from her extensive, valuable knowledge and resources and everything that she provides, but that she had her first business when she was 19, and she does all of this with 4 kids. So they were like, whoa, that was amazing. So if you are watching this live, please do stick around for comments and questions at the end, and feel free to pop in any questions in the chat box as we go. We are excited to announce that there will be a draw for a $50 credit from us here at Switch on Health for one lucky attendee. And this can go towards your next enrollment, whether it be your current course of study or you might like to do one of our short courses. And Anil is giving away an amazing prize, which is her course, Thriving in Practice. And it is valued at $497. And she is very generously giving that away to one lucky participant tonight also. So if you are quite interactive, ask lots of questions and that sort of thing. And Neil will be awarding the prize to someone who's very active this evening. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're welcome to pop any questions you have into the comments box below, and we promise to get back to you. Also, if you're watching on YouTube and you like what we do, please do click on the subscribe button, because the more subscribers we have, the more we can offer, and we look forward to offering you more. So I will hand it over to you now, Anil. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carmen. Just before you mute yourself, can you just confirm for me in the top right corner, do you see a grey box? I've got the chat window open, so I'm not sure if that's obscuring my slides at all on your end.
No, I can't see it at all from my end.
Okay, great. Well, I'll just leave it there so I can see the chat as well.
Okay,
Hi,
perfect.
everybody. Welcome. Thank you guys for joining me live tonight for this webinar. I'm really excited to be presenting this webinar to you. And the reason why that is because I was very fortunate when I first started my practice at the age of 19 to have learned some really essential clinical skills, or not clinical skills, but client retention skills and marketing skills that really set me up for success. And because of the basics of what I learned from such a young age, and I had probably less than $1,000 in my bank account when I opened the doors to my practice. So I had to get really creative on how I was going to promote my practice without having a marketing budget. And through trial and error, I managed to build a very successful multi-modality, multi-practitioner clinic. And then I later opened up a Pilates studio and a gym. So everything I'm teaching you today is stuff that I have been either fortunate enough to have learned early on in my career from a chiropractor that I worked 1 year with before I started my own practice on my own. But everything else I'm teaching in here is all of the stuff I wish I had learned as a student before I opened up my practice, because the difference this will make in your clinical practice, having overcome all the mindset blocks that all of us or most of us as practitioners face, will be the difference in a lot of cases between giving up or persevering and being really, really successful. So I'm really excited to be sharing all of my content with you today. It is a very short presentation, and I must say I'm very not familiar with short presentations. I like to deliver lots and lots of value in my content. So I've done my best to condense this into a short presentation. And you are welcome to ask questions at any time. I'll answer them at the end, but if they come up during the presentation, please pop them straight into the chat window. That way you won't forget, and then I can come back and answer all of your questions at the end as well. The other thing I'd love for you to do is to be really engaged in the comments. As Carmen mentioned, I'm giving away access to my Thrive in Practice course, which is all of the fundamentals you need to know to build a successful and thriving practice. So the most engaged person in the group will get access to that for free. But what I'd love for you to do is to write #love or #wow or #aha when I say something that really hits home for you, because that really reiterates to everybody else who's watching or listening what is hitting home for other practitioners, and that really helps them see what's kind of important and they should pick up on as well. I really encourage you to take notes as we go. You may want to come back and watch the recording a second time and take some more notes. That's typically what happens in my webinars. But don't feel too overwhelmed by the content I teach. I'm going to tell you everything that I believe you need to know, but you'll just walk away with whatever resonates with you. So we're going to get started with the fundamentals of clinical practice. And that is your why. So your why is, why are you doing this? Why are you going to be getting into clinical practice for those that are still studying? And for those that are already in practice, I want you to take a moment to think about what is your why. Now, your why is your driving force. It's the anchor that holds you when things get really, really tough. It's very easy as practitioners to feel so overwhelmed by all of the things we've got to do in our practice. And so we naturally feel really deflated, and sometimes we want to give up. And a lot of us go back to that mentality of, maybe it would just be easier for me to have a 9-to-5 job where I don't have to think about all the business stuff. And the reason for that is because we got into our studies because we wanted to be practitioners. We wanted to help patients. And we never really thought about the fact that we can't just be practitioners. We've also got to be business owners if we want to run our own practices. And so often what I see amongst my mentees and people that do my course and people that use the My Appointments platform as well, is that they often feel really, really deflated because things aren't quite going the way that they had expected, and they feel really overwhelmed because there's so many hats that they have to wear in their business. So one of the most important things I think you should start with is understanding what is your driving force. Because as I said, when things get really tough, and they will, and that's okay, that's a normal part of your journey. But when they do get to that stage where you start questioning yourself and you start feeling lost, just by reconnecting with your why, it really helps anchor you back into where you want to be and where you need to go in order for you to move forward in a positive light. So it sounds like something really basic, but I promise you, this is something that's really going to sustain you out through your practice. Another thing I like to say is your why bigger than your excuses? Because a lot of the time we have these excuses. It's too hard. I don't know enough. I'm time poor. I've got limiting beliefs around money, or, other beliefs, self-worth. And so when these excuses start coming up for us, if you reconnect to your why, and your why is something that's really deep-seated and something that you're really passionate about, it really does help you get back on track. So I want you to take a moment, not now, but sometime after this webinar, just to think about, why are you wanting to go into practice? Why are you a practitioner? Why do you want to help your patients? And you really need to think about this at a deeper level, not just, I want to help patients. Why do you want to help patients? If it's because you had your own health issues, what does it mean to you to help other people? So every time you answer that question, why am I doing this? I want you to ask yourself that same question 7 times, because by that 7th layer, you're going to get to something that's a lot more deeper. And typically it centers around something in our upbringing. For me, a lot of my why comes down to wanting to help people because I've had a history of chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and a whole bunch of other things, but also because I grew up with parents who are very medically minded. And I don't want that for my children. I want my children to have the choice of being able to see a homeopath or a naturopath. And so a lot of mine stems back to the things that I had to deal with as a child by not having parents who knew enough about natural medicine. So when you dig deep, you're going to find it's really going to help support you in your journey for when those times get really tough. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Be prepared. Doubts will always creep in, and that is okay. I always say this, and it'll come up probably a few times today. There are no failures in business, only lessons or wins. So I'm going to repeat that again. There are no failures in business, only lessons or wins. Write that down, because when you do go into clinical practice, you will find that things won't always go your way, and it's very easy to feel deflated by that. So when you understand that it's not a failure, it's something that's given you the opportunity to learn something, and the next time round, you know what not to do, or you know what you need to improve on in order to continue to get better results. You're never going to be perfect. You're never going to know all the answers, but all you need to do is put one foot in front of the other in order for you to keep moving forward, because that is how you grow and that is how you learn. So don't doubt yourself. Don't give up because things start feeling really difficult for you. Just be prepared that things aren't going to go your way all the time, and that is perfectly okay. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Now, this is really, really cliche. I'm sure you've probably all heard this, but I cannot stress the importance enough to you about why you need to be prepared. One of the things that I see commonly amongst practitioners, again, is that feeling of being overwhelmed because we're having to wear so many hats. We need to be present for our patients. We need to be on top of our accounting. We need to be doing marketing. We need to find time for our families and self-care and everything else. And so often what happens is that we get so overwhelmed that we get burnt out. And therefore, a lot of practitioners don't last long in this industry because they don't have a really good work-life balance. And you may not ever get your work-life balance perfect. I know I probably still haven't today, but it's a matter of keeping going and making sure that you're always planning ahead. So I always suggest that you should have 3 action steps that you want to take, and then you break each of those action steps into really tiny little steps. For example, I need to create 5 social media posts. I need to write the copy for those social media posts. I need to create the videos. I need to create a landing page. I need to update my website. When they're really tiny little pieces and it's coming out of your head and onto a piece of paper or onto a Google document, the amount of relief, the free sensation that you have because you reduce that mental clutter is going to make an absolute massive difference to your ability to be successful in your practice. So where possible, write down absolutely everything that's going on in your head, write it down, get clear, because that's how you're going to more easily be able to move forward. Now, one of the other areas that I commonly see practitioners really struggling with is setting their prices. So what most people do is they look around the area and they see what everybody else is charging. And ultimately, when we're new graduates, we typically try to come in at the lower end of the scale, if not the lowest end of the scale, because we think that's probably going to be the best way to get more people through the door. But I can tell you from having done this myself, that is not the best way to decide what you should be charging for your services. So what I want you to think about doing when you get to that stage of thinking about your pricing is to reverse engineer the process. And that is, I want you to think about how much money ideally would you like to make per year? And let's say your goal is to earn $100,000 a year in your practice. The next step is working out what your average price might be for your services. So let's say, or let's go to the number of patients you want to see. That might be easier for you. So $100,000 is what I want to earn. Now what I need to do is have a look at how many patients ideally I would like to see every week. If it's 5 a day and you work 5 days a week, that's going to be 15, for example. So what you want to do is work out how much do you need to charge those patients that you're seeing in order to get the value of what you need to charge them to satisfy what your annual return, or not your return, what you would like to earn every year. When you reverse engineer the process, you'll come up with a figure that feels much more in line with your worth. If you come at this from a position of trying to charge less or trying to charge less than what you think you're worth, then you're going to end up resenting your patients and feeling like they're stopping you from earning what you deserve to get. Now, that sounds really counterintuitive, but I can tell you that I work with practitioners that have been in practice for 10 to 15 years and they don't charge their worth, and they start resenting their work because they're not generating enough income to make their business sustainable. And so they naturally want to give up. And because their patients are paying them what they're asking, they're taking that resentment on their patients as if it's their patient's fault, but it's not. In fact, some practitioners I've seen, their patients are telling them that they're not charging enough and they feel guilty about only paying a small amount to see the practitioner. But the practitioners have their own money blocks, and so they are scared to charge what they're worth. They're scared to ask for what they think that they're worth. And as a result, they end up having this little barrier between their clients, either setting up that barrier because there's resentment because they're not getting paid their worth, or they're feeling like they just should give up because they're not worth what they think they should get, if that makes sense. And I'm going to go into money blocks in the mindset module in a moment as well. But I want you to think about what you want to earn and reverse engineer the process and work out what that figure comes down to. That's what should be your starting point for what you should be charging for your services. From there, and only from there, I would go around and see what everybody else in my area is charging. If you're telehealth, you're open slather, you can do whatever you like. But if you're doing in-person services, I still would look at what's happening around the market to see what people are currently paying for your services. But I wouldn't base my figures, my prices on that. You definitely don't want to come at the lower end of those values, and you definitely don't want to come at the highest end that puts you out of the market either. So your happy balance is probably going to be somewhere in the middle, but only decide on that price if seeing the amount of patients that you are capable of seeing returns you the amount that you need to make it worthwhile for you to keep your business open. So this is something that will really help you, because when you start your practice, you're going to be starting at a rate that you hopefully know that you are worth. Now, one of the biggest lessons I have ever learned in my practice, I only learned about 3 months ago. And I've been in practice for 23 years. And I was having a bit of a tough time because there was a lot going on in my practice, and between the My Appointments practice management software that we've built and a few other things that I was working on. And I was really struggling just to get stuff done because I was being pulled in so many directions. And someone said this to me, and that is that done is better than perfect. And I really implore you to write this down and put it on your computer so you can come back and refer back to this at any time, because the amount of time that I have wasted as a business owner trying to make things perfect before I released it out to the public. I mean, I actually shudder at the thought of how much time and money I have lost in that process. Why? Because let's say you want to get a social media post out, or you want to get some marketing done. When you're too busy worrying about those really little details, like, should I use italic, or should I use Arial, or should I use Helvetica, or should I use a black text, or should I use a navy text, or should I have my logo looking like this, or should I have my website looking like this? You spend so much time and energy worrying about things that make zero difference to the bottom line. You're not going to have a patient going, I'm not going to book in to see Carmen because she's using Arial font. You're not going to have somebody saying, oh my God, I can't believe she used red on her homepage. I would never see that practitioner. And yet we spend a countless amount of time that we will never get back trying to make everything perfect. At the end of the day, getting it to that perfect stage, it's either going to take way too long, or you're never going to release it because you're too busy trying to perfect it. And that time that you've lost trying to perfect it, you've also lost money. Because if you put something out there in marketing, as I mentioned to you earlier, there's no failures in business, only lessons or wins. So if you put out something that's good, maybe it's not perfect, but it's still good, it gives you the opportunity to test the market to see the response. And so instead of spending all this time working on something that may not work, you've spent a little bit of time, you've put it out there, you've got the feedback, and then you can continue to work on it to make it perfect. Now, I really want to stress to you that this little quote is life-changing, because you are not going to be beholden to your desk time and time and time again trying to make things perfect. And it is very hard. I get this. I'm a bit of a perfectionist myself, but when I started realizing that how much time and energy and money I was wasting trying to get things perfect, it really dawned on me that I've wasted so many years of my life trying to get things right when I could have just got it done and out there. So write that down. Don't ever forget that, because it will be a big savior for you when you do get into practice. Now, mindset is arguably one of the most important things in business. So this is module 2, and I want to talk to you about all of the things that practitioners really struggle with when they get into practice. Why? Because if you know this information from the get-go, you are going to be miles ahead of everybody else, because you're not going to be coming up against these roadblocks that continuously come up for practitioners. Now, I want you to think about it from this perspective. If you go out and do some marketing and you get people coming through the door, but you've got all these blocks. You've got money blocks, you've got limiting beliefs around self-worth, around imposter syndrome, and all sorts of other things like that. Or you're not confident asking patients to rebook because you don't want to feel like a pushy salesperson. You're going to spend all this energy getting these people in the door and losing them. So it's not going to serve you to continuously put your money and time and effort into marketing your business if you can't retain the patients that you've got. Now, the third module goes all into client retention and attraction, but for this one, it's addressing your mindset blocks, which is so, so important. So one of the biggest barriers I see is practitioners being too scared to ask patients to rebook with them. If you are already in clinical practice or in student clinic or anything of those along those lines, I'd love to hear from you if you really struggle with rebooking patients, and if what the reason for that is. Is it because you feel like you're pushy? Is it because you don't want to come across as desperate to your patients? I'd really love to hear from you. Now, for me, the reason why I struggled with rebooking my clients was exactly that. If I'm good at what I do and my patients love my treatments, they're going to want to come back to see me, right? They're going to want to come back in without me having to be pushy or asking them to rebook. They're going to say, Anil, when can I see you next? That was my mentality when I first graduated. And unfortunately, it's very far from the truth. It's not how things go in clinical practice. So I'm going to tell you a little story about a patient of mine named Mark. He was one of my very first patients. This was in my final year of my myotherapy course, and I was working with a chiropractor at the time as a massage therapist. So I'm 19 years old and seeing this case that is incredibly complex. So this is a gentleman who's driven down a 70-meter embankment in his truck. He had to be revived. He'd broken bones all over the place. So he was 2 years into his recovery when I saw him. So as a I hadn't even fully graduated from my course, but as a new practitioner, I already didn't have the confidence in treating this gentleman, but he'd been referred by the chiro, and I obviously couldn't say that I wouldn't treat him. So I took him into the room and I just did what I know how to do, which is just to let my hands work their magic and ask him a few questions. By the end of that consult, Mark said to me that my treatment, and he'd seen a lot of practitioners, different massage and myotherapists and chiropractors and osteos and you name it. He said to me, no one has been able to help me as much as you have in one single visit. I cannot believe how much of my pain you've been able to reduce. So naturally, I'm beaming, feeling really good about myself because I've done exactly what I wanted to do, which is to support this person in getting better. Then we came to the front and I just said, thank you and bye-bye, and walked away. We had a receptionist in the office at that stage, and normally the receptionist takes the bookings. So the gentleman paid for his service and walked out without booking an appointment. And so I felt a bit disheartened because I thought to myself, if you love the treatment so much, and if you thought I was the best practitioner that's helped him the most out of anyone he's ever seen, why didn't he rebook? So 2 weeks later, he walks into the practice to see the chiropractor. And I thought for sure he's going to rebook now. And he didn't. So the chiropractor came to me at the end of our session, end of our work day. And he said, what happened with Mark? I said, he went really well. He loved the treatment. He really got really great benefit from the treatment. And he said, well, why didn't he rebook? I said, I don't know. I thought if he loved it, he'd want to come back to see me. He said, did you ask him to rebook? And I said, no. And he said, why not? I said, because I didn't want him to think that I was being pushy or that I needed his money. I wanted him to want to come back in. He said, let me tell you what Mark said. Yes, he said that you're one of the best practitioners ever seen, but that you're only good at providing temporary relief. And I said, that's not fair. He had one session. How can he decide that I can only provide temporary relief? He said, because you didn't tell him to rebook. So he's out there thinking that you're only good at giving temporary relief and that you actually can't help him. And for me, this was mind-boggling. This is somebody who's saying that no one's helped him as much as me, but simultaneously walking out of the practice feeling like I can't help him. And so this is what I've come to notice. If you do not tell your patients to rebook with you, they're going to think one of three things. One, you're too busy and you don't want to see them. Two, you don't know how to help them. Or three, you don't want to help them. This is Massive, because when you start looking at it from this perspective, you're now flipping the script and realizing that if you don't tell your patients what they need, they're going to think something about you, which is not true. So, what's happening is that as practitioners, we're letting our own insecurities get in the way of our patients' care. So, we're worrying about what they're thinking about us instead of just telling them what they need. So, if there's one thing you take away from tonight, it is this: you must tell your clients confidently what they need. If you've done your job to tell your clients what they need and they don't rebook, that is perfectly okay. But if you let that patient walk out of there without telling them what they need, they're going to walk around telling other people that you can't help them. And you know that you can't fix somebody in one visit. None of us can, unless we're miracle workers. So if you want people walking out of there thinking that you're not that great of a practitioner and that you can't help them simply because you didn't ask them to rebook, then you absolutely must get comfortable with asking your patients to rebook. Now, I want to reframe this slightly differently for you as well. One, does the patient need the treatment? If the answer is yes, then all you're doing is your duty of care in telling them what they need. So, how can we improve this and make us feel more comfortable and confident asking our patients to rebook? And the answer is actually quite simple. For me, I map out my patient's journey. So every step of the way through my patient's journey, from booking online to booking an appointment to showing up through the door, I have mapped out every single touch point right through until the minute the patient leaves, and then what happens after they leave as well. That in itself has made me really clear on where I need to take my patients to get their health where I want it to be or where they want it to be. Now that I've mapped out my journey, I know exactly what to expect of myself at every step of the way. So I'll skip forward to what happens in the treatment room, but I want you to think about everything before the treatment room and after the treatment room as well. When you're in that room with your patient, you are going to say to them, patients that typically see me with this condition, whatever they've come to see you for, usually need between X and X number of treatments in order to get on top of their health. Now, because I've not seen you before and I've not worked with you before, and I can't be with you 24 hours to make sure that you're compliant and you're following my advice, I am going to see you again next week so that I can see how you're responding to the treatment and make any necessary changes to your treatment plan in order for us to get you the results that you're after. How does that sound? Now I have very clearly laid out for my patients exactly what they need to know about their journey moving forward. Okay. So if they know that typically it takes, in my case, I'm a body worker, so it's a little bit different for the ingestive therapist. But in my case, I usually need to see my patients 3 to 4 times before I really got on top of their problem and know what's going on. So I'll say that to them. I usually see my patients 3 to 4 times to get on top of their problem. But then after that, I usually see them every month or every 6 weeks or every 8 weeks, depending on how well you look after yourself. If you can do everything that I'm suggesting that you do, you'll need to see me less. But I need you to follow through with this advice in order for us to get the results that you need. When you say, how does that sound? Your patients are immediately going to go, oh, yeah, that sounds great. So now when you take them to rebooking, they already know that they're going to rebook with you because you've told them what they need. So now it makes it so much easier for us to ask them to rebook. But you're not going to say to them, did you want to book another appointment, or when suits you, or what time do you want to come in, or did you want to come in? You're not going to give any fluffy information or asking questions like that. You're going to tell them what they need. So, Carmen, as I mentioned, I need to see you again next week. Do you prefer morning or afternoons? Mornings, great. I work on Monday and Wednesday mornings. Which do you prefer? Wednesday, great. I've got 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. available. Which do you prefer? 11 a.m. Great, thank you. Off she goes. Carmen's booked an appointment and out she goes. Now, if you think about this from a patient perspective, them hearing their practitioner ask them to rebook in the manner that I've just described gives them the 100% confidence that this practitioner knows what they're talking about. If you compare that to, oh, Carmen, when did you want to come in to see me? Oh, when have you got time? When is it going to suit you? Now Carmen's going, oh, hang on a minute. When's it going to suit me? Oh, you know what? I've got so many kids and I've got to work and I've got this and I've got that. There's no good time. And that is the reality. If you ask me, when do you want to come in? I'm just going to scratch my head and go, there's literally no good time for me to leave my office. And then after hours is difficult because I've got 4 kids. So tell me this is what you've got available. Now I'm going to work around that in order to fit your schedule. This language will be such a savior because now you can confidently deliver it to your patients. And the fluffy language around when do you want to come back if it suits you, what it's sending to your clients is that this is not something that's hyper valuable that they actually need, compared to being confident and saying, this is when I need to see you again. And I always offer two options because it makes it easier for the mind just to go this or that, as opposed to going what day suits you, or what time suits you, etc. And typically you know that as well because they've obviously come in to see you. So you're typically going to understand that if they've come to see you at 12 o'clock on a Wednesday, that's typically when they're going to be available. So that helps in working out which two timeframes you might offer them. Now, the other big barrier that I see with practitioners is recalls. And recalls are when we follow up patients that haven't been in to see us and we know that they're due for a treatment or a service or to be checked up on. Now, a lot of you will automatically feel icky with the idea of following up past patients, but let me reframe this for you so that you understand that it's your duty of care to help your patients get the results that they came to see you for. Now, again, I love stories and I love to tell stories because you may not remember a lot of what I teach you today, but chances are you're going to remember my stories. And so for me, I hated doing recalls and I never did them. I was always busy. I had a waiting list. I didn't need to do them, but I was a very heart-centered patient care practitioner. And so everything I did was for my patient's interests. I never worried about money because money always flowed when you come with the right intentions. So I didn't need to do recalls with my patients, but it's should be common practice that you do these things in order to be able to build a sustainable practice so that you're not constantly getting out there looking for patients. These are the things that are going to increase your rebooking rates, increasing your existing patients coming in to see you, and reduce the need for you to do any marketing. So the way I learned this really valuable lesson was through a patient of mine named Shelley. And Shelley was an older lady. She was a nurse and she would see me every month without fail. She was there for 3 years. And no matter what I said to her, Shelley, you don't need to come back next month. You're doing really well. Why don't we try and stretch it out to 6 weeks? Why don't we try and stretch it out to 8 weeks? To the point that she got upset at me because she thought I didn't want to see her. So when I realized that no matter what I said, she still wanted her monthly appointments, we left it and I was seeing her every month without fail. Then one day she disappeared. She never canceled her appointment. She never missed her appointments. But one day she just disappeared off the face of the earth. And I was really worried about her. But I thought, if I call Shelley and say to Shelley, where are you? Why aren't you here? What's wrong? What's happening in your life? She's going to think that I'm desperate and I need her money. And I don't want her to think that because that's not the sort of practitioner that I am. So I didn't call her. A year later, and I thought about her often and I felt really guilty because all I kept thinking was, what if something bad has happened to her or her husband or someone in her family? But again, I didn't get on the call because, as earlier I mentioned, I let my own insecurities get in the way. A year later, I get a phone call from Shelley. She knew my schedule very well. Saturday afternoon, I finished at 2:10. She's on the phone with me saying, Anil, are you still at the office? Please wait for me. I'm around the corner. My daughter had a baby. I want you to meet my granddaughter. And I was so excited to see her. So in she walks and she is angry. She was pleasant on the phone, but she walked in and she was so angry. And the first thing she said to me was, why didn't you call me? And I just melted and I said, Shelley, I'm really sorry. I've been thinking about you. I've been really worried about you, but I didn't call you because I didn't want you to think that I wanted your money. You know that that's not me. That's not me as a practitioner. You know I love doing what I do. You know I care about my patients, but I didn't call you because, again, I didn't want you to think that I just was calling to try to book you in. And she said, Anil, for the first time in my life, I started to think that maybe it was all about the money for you, that you didn't really care about helping, that it was just about getting bookings. My chiro called me 3 times and all they did was call me to check in on me. And that was it. She said, you didn't even call once. And that was a really big lesson for me, because if my patients were out there thinking that the reason I wasn't following them up was because I didn't care about them, that to me was a bigger barrier than reaching out and checking in on them. Now, it's a very easy thing to do for recalls because you've got to ask yourself, do they need this appointment? If the answer is yes, or are you concerned about them? Do you need to check on them? If the answer is yes, then it should be simple for you to do this. But how I'm going to reframe this so it doesn't feel icky to you and that you don't feel desperate is that you're not contacting your patient to book an appointment. You're just contacting them to check in. That is it. Okay. So, hey, Carmen, I haven't seen you in a little while. I was just thinking about you. I was just checking in to make sure everything's okay. That's it. Do you see how easy it is to just check in with your patients? What you're going to find, I promise you this, you'll get some that won't reply, But what you're going to find is that your patients will genuinely be thankful that you've taken the time to check in. Remember, you're not asking them to rebook, you're just checking in. So your patients are naturally going to feel really appreciative for the fact that you've taken the time to reach out to them. And that helps build that relationship and that trust factor as well. But what you'll also find is that a lot of them will say to you, I'm so sorry. I've been thinking about you. I've been meaning to come in, but life just got in the way. I've been wanting to book an appointment. Can you let me know what you've got available? And so the natural progression is that they're going to ask you to rebook. Okay. But more importantly, when your patients know you're reaching out, you're showing them that level of care. This is how you build a practice with patients that become raving fans and tell everybody about you. Now, I did once I'd been in practice for maybe about a year, I did zero marketing. I grew my practice just on referrals, and that was it. And I had a waiting list. And the reason for that was because I had exceptional client care. My patients knew that if I couldn't help them, I'd be referring them on. They knew that I would do everything that I could to help them, and they knew that I would go above and beyond if I needed to help them. That is how you build a sustainable practice, by showing your patients that you care. So if you do feel icky about recalls, look at it from the perspective that you're doing what's in the best interest of your patients and showing them that you do actually care about them as well. Don't let your money issues get in the way of client care. So this is another really, really big one. And I promise most of you will feel like this. When you say to your patient, that's $120 or however much you're going to charge, you're going to feel incredibly guilty in most cases about taking that money from them. Why? Because we're healers and we like to help people. And we have this belief that because we love what we do, we should be able to do it for free. And so taking money from somebody feels a bit difficult, feels a bit hard. It feels a bit like, oh, do I really have to do this? Or do I, it's that awkwardness of having to physically take the money from the clients. And I can tell you that's exactly how I felt. In fact, when I graduated, we were charging $40 for an hour massage, which is very, very, very cheap. But even at that time, it was well below the industry standard. And even that I felt guilty with. Why? Because there were other practitioners that were more qualified than me. And I felt that a bit guilty that that patient was paying me a similar amount to see me when they could have paid somebody who was more qualified. Now, let me tell you this, out of all of the practitioners that I've ever had working in my practice, the ones that did the best were not the ones that were the most knowledgeable. They weren't the ones that were the best with their clinical skills. It was the ones that were best with their patient care. Time and time again, the ones that had the best patient bedside manner did better than the ones who were more educated or more knowledgeable or had more experience. So what I want you to really take from this is that just because you are a newer practitioner, it doesn't mean that the care you're providing for your patients is less than anything that somebody who's more qualified than you will provide. Why? Because you are more likely to go above and beyond for your patients than that busy practitioner who's been in practice for a really long time that doesn't take the time to get to know their patients or to go above and beyond to support their patients. So don't feel guilty about taking money because you're not as knowledgeable or because you know that the economy is bad at the moment. Just tell your patients what they need. And don't allow your money issues to project onto your patients. Now, again, probably my last story for the night that I'll tell you, but it's another really powerful one. And that is that I saw a naturopath once and I knew how much she charged. It was $160. She had the prices on her website. I booked in, paid for the service. And at the end of the consult, she didn't ask me to rebook. So I had to say to her, when did you want to see me again? And her response was, oh, uh, if you can come back next month, that'd be really good, but it's going to cost $160 if you can afford that. And she said it in this really exasperated, non-confident way. Now, what do you think I started thinking? I'm somebody who will spend a lot of money on my health because I want to get better. But now this practitioner has made me feel like she's not worth that $160. One, because she doesn't believe it. But two, because I have a lot of money blocks myself. Growing up, I have a very scarcity mindset around money because growing up, my parents didn't have any money. We always struggled financially. And so for me to spend my hard-earned money on my health is because it's important to me. But now somebody's come along and said, if you can afford that. So my first thought is, can I afford that? Oh my God, I'm such a bad mum. I can't believe that I spent $160 on myself. I should have put that money towards my kids. These are what you are doing when you are projecting your own money issues to your patients. So ask yourself, when it comes to taking that money, did the client book with you knowing your prices? If they're on your website, if you've told them over the phone, they already know what they are. Have they booked in to see you? Yes. They're there to get better. That's all you need to be concerned about. You don't know their financial situation. You don't know what they can and can't afford. And it is not your place to worry about it. You're not their financial advisor. You are just there to give them the care that they came to see you for. So if you do have a lot of blocks around money, which is very common for a lot of us, don't let it get in the way of your patient's care. There's lots that you can do to help with that as well. And that is, again, making sure that your prices are on your website, putting it in your booking confirmations. A good practice management software will do all of this stuff for you automatically. Make sure that you tell your patients what they need and stop worrying about what they can and can't afford. Now, I touched already on imposter syndrome, but it's another really big one. And that is that when we first graduate, we feel a bit inferior to everybody else because they've got a lot more experience than we do. Again, I felt the same thing. So when I worked in that chiropractic clinic in the final year of my myotherapy course, I was taking over from an existing myotherapist who was going on leave for 3 months. She had completed a 4-year human movement degree plus the 3-year myotherapy course and had been in practice for 3 years when I was taking over her patients as a final year myotherapy student with 0 experience. So I'm walking in with these massive imposter syndrome, feeling like these patients are giving their hard-earned money to me and I'm not worthy of that. And what happened at the end of the 3 months was that the patients preferred my treatment over the other myotherapist, and the chiropractor kept me on and told that myotherapist not to come back because the patients preferred my treatments. So what I'm telling you is that I'm not special. I'm not like, I'm great at what I do as a myotherapist, sure. But when I'm that young into my practice, I'm coming from this place of feeling inferior to everybody else, when in actual fact, because my clinical care or my patient care was above and beyond what a lot of other practitioners were, that is part of the reasons why the patients preferred me. So when you start seeing patients, stop comparing yourself to others and stop expecting that you're going to know all the answers. You don't need to know the answers. You just need to know where to look for those answers. So if somebody comes to see you and you don't know the answer to what you need to prescribe to them, just be honest. Say to them, Carmen, this is a really interesting case. I've actually not dealt with this before, but I'm really confident that I'll be able to find the best solution for you moving forward. So what I'm going to do is a little bit more research to determine what you need, and then I'm going to come back and discuss that with you. How does that sound? Now, do you think Carmen is sitting there going, oh my God, I'm never going to come back to see this practitioner? She's going to be thinking, wow, she's going above and beyond to help me, when a lot of other practitioners would have just gone, not too hard, I might refer on, or they'll half-hearted attempt try to fix this patient and not really do what's right by the patient as well. So when you are honest with your patients and you don't know the answers, that is enough to keep them on board, to making sure that you have the time to give them the treatment plan and the care that they need. Another really important factor here is to make sure that you send out intake forms before the clients come to see you. Now, this is something that we've automated through the My Appointments practice management software. Now, if you weren't at my last webinar that I ran for Switch on Health, I did a full demo of the software. It's cost you $0 per month to use the software, and it's all pre-done for you. All of the intake forms, everything is done automatically for you. When you've got software that can do this for you, it means that if your clients are filling in the intake form before they come to see you, you are going to have the roadmap of what you need to do before the patient has walked in the door. And the beauty of that is you can now do a little bit of research and determine what you think that patient needs. Then do your history with them when they come in to see you. And now you have all the answers to make you feel confident about how to move forward. So intake forms before the clients come in are absolutely essential, especially if you're a new practitioner. But again, stop worrying about having all the answers. I can tell you that even as a practitioner with decades of experience and other practitioners that I've met that have decades of experience, we still to this day tell our patients that we don't have the answers, but we're going to go research for them. And none of those patients have ever left our practice because they have the confidence and trust that we know what we're talking about. Time is another one. Everyone is, I'm time poor, I'm time poor, I'm time poor. And I get that. I'm certainly feel the same myself, but we all get the same 24 hours. So how you choose to use your 24 hours is up to you. For me, this is not to make anybody feel bad or to make anybody feel inferior or anything of that. But for my life to work, I've got to wake up at 5 a.m. so that I can get some exercise in. I'll have a sauna, I'll do my yoga, I'll go for my walk. Then I'll make the kids' lunches. I'll prepare dinner, I'll put a load of laundry on, I'll clean up in the kitchen, drop off my kids so that at 9 o'clock I am ready and at my desk. But what's most important here is that I've taken care of all the mental clutter. I don't have to worry about what I'm going to cook for dinner because it's organized. I don't have to worry about lunch boxes or laundry because it's organized. So how you choose to use your 24 hours is completely up to you. That doesn't mean you have to do what I do, but what I've done is found a way in order for me to run 2 businesses with 4 kids and still have me time and time for my kids and all that sort of stuff. So don't be one of those people that makes that excuses, I'm time poor, I'm time poor. If you look at where you're spending your time, you will see that there's probably a large chunk of time that goes on social media, on Netflix, on doing things that mean very little in the grand scheme of things. So if you are feeling time poor, look at your priorities and work out where you should be spending your time in order to be the most effective. And the last point I want to make on mindset is metrics. So a lot of us get really disheartened if somebody unsubscribes or unfollows us, or we don't get the results that we're after. We feel really, really deflated. But I want you to look at those metrics, those numbers as gold, because they will inform how you move forward. So when we get out there and we start marketing, we immediately think that people are going to flood us and wanting to come in to see us. So what you want to do is understand that the metrics that you're getting from your social media, from your Facebook ads, whatever it might be, are going to inform how you move forward. A lot of us will put an ad out there and expect people to book straight away. It does not work like that. In fact, only 3% of our addressable market are ready to buy right now. So if you put something out on social media, this is interruptive marketing, right? People aren't there looking for your services, but your ad or your post. Let me just pop that person on. Carmen, can you just find out who that is and just pop them on mute for me, please? So we get into this state of wanting to propose marriage on the first date. We're asking people to book before they've even they know us. So what you really want to focus on is building that know, like, and trust factor so that people get to know who you are and what you do before you expect them to book. And when you go into it knowing that people aren't going to jump when you put something out there, you can then take away that overwhelm and that feeling of deflation when things haven't quite gone your way. All right, I'm going to fly through the last couple of slides. So client retention and attraction. First of all, you must understand this before embarking on a marketing plan. Acquiring new clients is 5 times more expensive than retaining them, and costs are increasing. I want you to think about client retention, that it's about your clients, it's not about you. So a lot of the times we get into these roadblocks because we're worried about what our clients will say when we ask them to rebook or when we do a recall, for example. But I want you to think about client retention as something that's in your patient's best interest. It's your duty of care to do everything that you can to help them get the results. And when you reframe it like that, it makes you start seeing things in a different light. It doesn't matter how good you are as a clinician, you can't be with your clients 24/7. And this is why retention is so important, because you need to be checking in on them. Think about this. If you go to see a personal trainer and he gives you an exercise program and he never sees you again, are you going to retain everything that personal trainer has told you? And the reality is you're not. You need follow-ups with the personal trainer until you get into a habit of knowing what to do yourself. So that's how you need to see yourself as a practitioner, that you're here to make your patient's journey as easy as possible. And the best way to do that is to have good patient care and to be checking in on them and seeing them regularly until they form the habits and then they don't need you. I want you to focus on building relationships with your clients, because improved relationships result in improved compliance. And when you get better compliance, it results in improved results, which results in increased referrals. Again, this is how I built my practice. Help my patients, be there for my patients, be good as a practitioner, get them good results. They would refer without me having to do anything. The best marketing strategy ever, care. This is a saying by Gary Vee, who's a big time marketing social media guru. And I absolutely love this because this is as simple as it gets for marketing. When your strategy is to care, everything else follows. Good care, good service leads to more trust. It leads to more no-shows. It results again in more referrals and then no need for marketing. And if you can build a practice that doesn't require you to market yourself constantly, you are 10 steps ahead of everybody else. Every new and due client must be followed up. So every single new client you see, you should be sending them an SMS or calling them within 3 to 4 days of their appointment just to check in. Because if there's a roadblock, if something's happened, if they've reacted to a medicine, if they've not understood what you've asked them, if they're feeling really overwhelmed because you gave them too much information, that's your opportunity to pick up on it and address it, rather than waiting to see if they're going to show up for their next appointment. So every new and due client must be followed up. How can you wow your clients? I want you to take a moment to think about what can you do that sets you apart from other practitioners. Can you, for example, give them a welcome pack? Can you offer them tea and coffee? What can you do in your practice that really shows your patients that you care? Now, take a screenshot of this. I don't have time to go through everything with you, but I'm just giving you here some basic free ways that you can market your practice, as well as some paid ways as well. So if you don't have a marketing budget, don't fear, because there's a lot of things you can do that don't cost you any money or very little money to help grow your practice. Now, if you ask me, if I was trying to regrow my practice today, the first things I would do is asking for referrals, in-house promotions, recalls, and external promos. These are the things that are going to get patients in the door fast. Now, I don't have time to go through in detail about why you shouldn't feel icky about asking for referrals and why it's important for your patients as well. But I have a podcast called Thrive in Practice, and the very first episode goes into detail of those first 3 points. So please go listen to that. It's available on all your podcast apps, and it talks about all the things that you need to do right now to get patients through the door. When you do your marketing schedule and you know what at least 3 things you want to try, make sure you plan it out. If you are planned out for your marketing, you're going to avoid those clinic lulls. Now, if we're quiet, it's not because of what we did wrong now, it's what we didn't do 3 to 6 months ago. And this is why planning is so essential. Don't overcomplicate it. Just keep tracking a Google Calendar. This month I'm running this promotion or this marketing. Next month I'm doing this. You'll feel so much better knowing that you're organized and you can focus on your client care instead of always freaking out about how am I going to get the next new client through the door. This allows you to be focused with your patients when they are in front of you. And consistency is key. This increases your brand awareness and it builds trust. So you want to be able to plan out your marketing before you do it, and every single step that needs to be done for that marketing effort in order for you to launch it. And all of that has to be done before you start the campaign. Overview, find your tribe, connect with other practitioners on Facebook. I know you have a wonderful group already. We also have a group called the Natural Healthcare Practitioners Network. I'll repeat that again, Natural Healthcare Practitioners Network. If you want to join our group, you can ask questions there of qualified practitioners. Don't let your own insecurities get in the way of your client's care. Your money blocks are your own. They're not your clients. Do not project your own money issues onto them. You are the expert. Even if you don't know everything, you know more than your clients, and that is enough. Just tell them what they need. Client retention strategies will reduce or eliminate the need for you to find new clients. And successful people do what unsuccessful people won't. So don't look at somebody who's successful and think they're smarter than me, they're better than me, they know more than me. No, they're just willing to do the things that you maybe won't be willing to do. And that is to put themselves out there and risk doing something, even if they know that they might fail at it. Mindset is 100% key to your success. That means you're in control. So when we get in our own way, the good thing about that is that because you are the one who's through your mindset blocks, getting in your own way, the good thing about that is it means that if you're the problem, that you can then be the solution as well. Again, remembering done is better than perfect. Write it down, stick it on your computer, and please plan ahead. Now, I've got a couple of little bonuses, 3 hacks to build 90 days of content in 60 minutes for healthcare practitioners. Just go to content.anilmustafa.com.au if you want to download that. Please go and listen to my podcast, Thrive in Practice. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm putting up somewhat regular posts in there to try and inspire you and motivate you. And we're giving away the Thrive in Practice course shortly. So Carmen, if you can check through the comments and let me know who seems to be the most engaged, that person will win that course. But I've built this 8-week self-paced course to make it really easy and seamless for you to learn content in really bite-sized pieces and then take immediate action. Now, that course is actually valued at $997, but for Switch students, just pop in Switch 50 and you'll get 50% off that course if you want access to it. We also have the free practice management software, My Appointments. So if you are already in clinical practice or you're about to go into it, please take a look at our software and go back and watch the demo that we did for Switch a couple of months back. That is it. That is my presentation in a super, super fast manner, trying to give you as much content as possible in this tiny bit of time. So I'm going to open up to questions. Looks like there's a lot of comments here. Carmen, could you please just announce the winner for me while I read through these comments?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anil. That was an amazing presentation. As I knew it was going to be, because your last one was so amazing. I feel like you were talking directly to me through a lot of that. And I think a lot of everyone probably all thought the same thing. So if you're watching this live, we'll stop the recording in a moment and we'll open it up for questions. Remember that there will also be a draw for the $50 credit. If you're watching the recording, thank you for watching to the end, and learn more with Switch On